Welcome to the objective review of the latest Netflix animated series, The Dragon Prince, Book 1, Moon. So in objective review, I like to break a TV show down into 6 categories and assign weights to them depending on the genre. And a little background on this television show, it is from some of the writers and head directors of what I consider the greatest TV show of all time, Avatar: The Last Airbender. So let's get started with the first category of story. For fantasy shows, I assign a 35% weight to story. And the story of the show is this is a fantastical world with elves and dragons and humans, and there are 6 sources of magic: the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the ocean, and the skies. Sounds very familiar. If you take 2 of those away, you pretty much have the sources of magic in the show Avatar. But they all lived together in harmony until humans attacked. That sounds familiar also. But they attacked with a 7th new source of magic called dark magic. This type of magic is so appalling that the elves and the dragons banished and separated themselves from the human world. So now there's one side with humans and there's another side with the magical creatures such as dragons and elves. Apparently the humans got tired of that. And so that happened 1,000 years ago before the series. Humans got tired of that, and a couple, maybe decades or so before the series starts, the humans killed the Dragon King, and supposedly they kill the dragon egg, which holds the Dragon Prince, hence the show, The Dragon Prince. Cut back to recent times now, the Moon Shadow Elves, which is this group of shadow elves who derive their power from the moon and their magic from the moon, are group of assassins, and they're here in the human kingdom to seek vengeance on the humans. And they're here to kill the king. Not only the king, they're here to kill his son. So we cut to our human king, and he actually has 2 sons. He has a stepson named Callum, and he has a blood son named Ezron. Asking them to kill him, and her name is Rayla, and she has never killed before, and she wants to go and kill the king herself. But she comes across the 2 sons, and they all discover that the egg has been there the whole entire time. Now, that's about as far as go get into story, because I don't want to spoil anything for you, and that's pretty much the first episode. But the story is essentially them going on this trip to take the dragon egg back to the dragon queen, and hopefully they can bring peace to the 2 worlds, to the 2 sides. I think to wrap up the whole type of story and feel of the Dragon Prince is that I feel like it's a cross between Avatar: The Last Airbender, of course, just because it's a kids show and kind of has that kids feeling, but the story still really works for all ages. So it's a cross between Avatar and I think Lord of the Rings, just because how much magic is used, and Game of Thrones. I think there's a lot of Game of Thrones references in here. There's actually one on the nose reference about winter is coming, which I completely laughed at. And like Game of Thrones, the thing I really enjoy about the show is that even though there are multiple sides to these conflicts, there are still likable characters in each side, just as much as there's unlikable characters, which I think just adds another set of nuance, that there's just all these shades of gray here, that no one's necessarily right, no one's necessarily wrong, no one's necessarily all evil, no one's necessarily all good. But it's just real characters acting how they would be. I mean, sometimes that's how war is, unfortunately. So I really enjoy that aspect. Also, on their journey, they do have a clear antagonist, though, in the show, played by he's sort of the servant, the second hand of the king. And he's the one kind of playing the Game of Thrones here. He's the one that you're not too sure about. But sometimes he has a good side, and sometimes you're like, nah, that dude's straight up evil. But sometimes it's unclear, it's kind of iffy. So that's really good. I really enjoy characters like that. I really enjoy shows that paint people in shades of gray. Another thing that I loved about the story is just how our 3 main characters, Rayla, Ezron, and Callum, just start to really grow to love each other in a sense. Their friendship, you see it grow on screen. And I think it's weird to say that these characters really have chemistry because they're animated characters, but they really do. And I think you really believe that this is how they would act, that even though they start off really confrontational, because one of them was legit about to kill the other, the other two not so long ago, you really believe how they can come together to try and get peace in the world, and they really care about one another. Really enjoy that aspect of the story. So for story, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. It probably could have gone a little higher, but this is really season 1, and we haven't gotten into really the crux of these characters. We haven't gotten to the real crux of the story yet. Next category is emotion. I assign a 15% weight to emotion, and so far this season, this show hasn't leaned too far into emotion. It hasn't leaned too far into really getting you emotional and getting you either sad or really angry or mad. But that's not to say there aren't characters who really lean on that themselves. First off, I think the King does a really amazing job of it. You really see the weight of the crown on his head. You really see how he doesn't really necessarily worry about himself, but worry about his family, his kingdom, as he knows assassins are probably coming to kill him. So I just really loved how he displayed that. Also, second character that I really enjoyed the emotion of was you get to meet the aunt of the princess. And there's one point where they kind of have a reunion, and she just feels joyful to see them again. And I really bought that. Also, she's a great character. I mean, she's like this BA warrior, no nonsense, but she's also a really loving aunt, I think. Another thing about her is that she's a mute. And so I think just like Avatar: The Last Airbender, this show really is heavy on representation, and I, for one, really enjoy that. So, and then I think of our 3 main casts, I don't think the two princes do a lot of emoting of. I do think Rayla does. I think you see her at times being mad and happy, and you understand that. You empathize with her. So I really enjoyed her part. But like I said, I don't think it's so far the season leans too far into the emotion. So I give that a 7.5 out of 10. Next, on to action. I assigned 15% weight for action, and I think Rayla really carries the load here, which rightfully so. She is a trained assassin. She gets pretty much all the fight scenes because she's the only one that can fight. Callum can't fight at all. It's known that he is terrible at fighting. So she really carries the load there. Callum does do a little bit of magic here and there, but pretty much Rayla is the one who's carrying the fighting scenes. I do enjoy a lot of the chase scenes. A lot of times I feel like they're being chased. I also really enjoyed this waterfall scene. So that was done really well. And I think the scope of the show really helps the action because it just really tells you what the parameters are of the world and what is viable and what can happen. But don't expect any kind of bending, I think, yet. They don't really, I feel like they don't really control it the same way that Avatar does. And they really shouldn't, because then I'll be comparing the shows too much. And you really want these shows to be by themselves and do things their own way. So for action, I give it an 8 out of 10. So on to comedy, I assigned 5% weight for comedy, and there's pretty good, decent comedy in this. It's not constant, it's not laugh out loud comedy, I don't think, but you do get a couple of chuckles in at least every episode, I think. I think this really does a good job of giving a little bit of levity to the situations. And I think it's spread out. Every single character has at least one comedic moment, whether it's an antagonist or a supporting character or new characters or even side characters about Breaths, which is hilarious also. None of them are extremely good at comedy, but it's very balanced comedy. And it's not forced comedy either. It's just kind of situational comedy that comes when people are interacting with each other, which I really enjoy that. And there's a little bit of kid humor comedy in there also, but that's fine. I have a kid, and I think my daughter enjoy that comedy also. But like I said, it's not laugh out loud comedy, so I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Then on to acting. For acting, I give a 10% weight, and the voice acting in the show is pretty good. I mean, so far I don't think people have had to really stretch that much. I think everyone does a pretty solid job with their voice acting. I think there are a couple call outs, like I mentioned before, the King. For some reason, I just really enjoyed the king in this show. And I think Rayla at first was sort of annoying me because she talks with a very Scottish or Irish accent. Sorry, I can't discern the one from the other, which is just weird because no one else, not even other elves, I feel like talking that same accent. So that took a little bit of adjusting to get to, but I liked it after a while. But everyone does a pretty good job with their voice acting, I think. And like I mentioned before, the king really stood out for me. So I give that an 8 out of 10. Now on to directing. I assign 20% weight to directing, and directing really encompasses a lot of stuff. It encompasses the animation, the score, just the world building and the look and feel, and this is where the show shines. Like the first 3 minutes of the show, I think it's an amazing introduction to a world. I think it's one of the best introductions to a new series that I've seen. I think I hate kind of comparing it, but I think it's even better than the first opening of Avatar. But they introduce you to this whole world. They do a great job of it, and the visuals are amazing. There's just one scene where you see a huge dragon, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And that's the thing about the show is that the animation, I admittedly at first was really kind of pessimistic about the animation because I'm not a fan of sort of the cross between 2D and 3D animation. I'm sorry, most of the time I just want 2D animation because I love it, like Avatar, specifically like Legend of Korra or some anime. Just love that 2D animation. Because I just think sometimes, and even in this show, sometimes the 3D within the 2D animation doesn't necessarily work, but I get why they did it. I think this type of animation allows you to really feel like you're there with the characters, you're moving with them. There's this really great scene where I think the king's just walking in, and just the way the camera is scoping on it, you kind of feel there. And I don't think you can really do that with 2D animation. I don't feel like 3D animation, one thing, it's way more expensive, like Pixar level. It's expensive, or it looks a lot cheaper. And I just think that's a little bit less personal for some reason. So I do think they hit a great medium here. Because just every single still, really, I think, from the show looks amazing. So the animation is great. The music is really great. It's very reminiscent of Avatar, but it stands on its own. And it's not the same composer, but the music is great, and it adds to the epicness of the show. That does a great job. And also, I think the pacing is really done well in the show. It ended with each episode sort of ended with a little bit of cliffhanger that made me really want to watch more. So that's a good job on them. Which I was kind of interested how they would handle that, because usually, with Avatar, you don't have necessarily cliffhangers at the end of an episode. Each episode is sort of its own story, but you have little cliffhangers at the end of commercials. I was wondering how they would handle that, and they handled it greatly. So for directing, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see where it goes. So that can get us to our weighted average of 8.2 out of 10. And that is a great score. I'm a pretty harsh critic, I feel like. But this was a great first season. I have a couple different questions that I'm just waiting for answers. The only thing I didn't really like about the season is that it didn't have a emphatic end to it. It didn't feel like a whole story, not even a whole season. I feel like I'm just waiting on the second half of this season, and then that's going to end on a really impactful note. But so far, I loved it. I watched it with my daughter. She loved it. It was very enjoyable for her. So like I said, it's an all ages show. So that's my review, and I'm out.